The 2025 Women's Euros is here. In preparation for the tournament, we're analysing every single nation. Today, we're on to Spain. La Roja enter this year's competition as the favourites, despite never winning the European Championships before. We take a look at why everyone expects Spain to go all the way, what they're doing tactically that makes them so strong, but why there are also some vulnerabilities that could become an issue at the tournament. This is our Spain Euros preview.
So let's get into it then. Today we're going to be talking about Spain, probably the favourites for this competition, Harry. But they haven't always gone particularly well in the Euros.
No, they've had a tough time of it. They have only qualified for 4 previous tournaments, one back in '97, and then the 3 most recent ones. So they haven't been a name that we associate with going deep at the Euros and winning tournaments. They've only ever got as far as the semi-final stage. They've been knocked out of the quarterfinals at the last 3 tournaments. So there's a lot riding on this one for Spain. While they're dominating everything else in football, both women's, men's, youth, they're winning all the titles. The Women's Euros is the one title that has evaded Spain so far. But will it be fifth time of asking that they can go and get that title this season? This year it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's not been a happy tournament for Spain, and I think that the quality they've got, especially 3 years ago in the 2022 tournament, they would have been disappointed. Yes, they did get knocked out by eventual winners England, and that was a very close game. But with the quality they've had at the last couple of European tournaments, you'd have expected them to at least get past the quarter-final stage. That's what surprises me. The fact that they haven't got into the last 4. They haven't been reaching finals. Is that they've been falling at the first hurdle in the knockouts. So I think that this year it is paramount that they do get through the group and that they get past the last 8. They need to. We know the quality they've got. We know how good they are. We know where they should be. But that just hasn't materialised at the recent tournaments.
Yeah, I think many who are solely familiar with the modern version of Spain would assume that pedigree goes back a few years, but actually it is quite a modern thing, Spain being this dominant force in the women's game. It's come with the rise of Barcelona and their investment into their youth academy. There's then obviously led to them having a fantastic first team, and then we're seeing the Spain national side develop because of that. But it's not long that we've seen this Spain dominance. It was Germany in the European scene, and the US in the world scene for many years. Now we've started to see some other sides come up and compete. But Spain will be keen to win the Euros and make it 4 different winners in the last 4 tournaments. And I would say they're probably the favourites going into this year.
Yeah, I think so, especially compared to other tournaments. I think that in 2022 people thought they could do something, but the fact they met England in the quarters meant that one of them was always going to get knocked out. The tournaments before that, I think that obviously Netherlands went and won 2017, and they probably went into that as favourites. You think that was Lieke Mertens in her prime, and that was a difficult one. When they got to the semi-finals in '97, that was a bit of a one-hit wonder season where they kind of just turned up, surprised everybody, still didn't win it, and then they went away for another few years before they came back in 2013. So yeah, this is the first year where I think that they've got the squad, and on paper they go into this tournament where the majority of people are expecting them to win. Yes, there's other clubs right in that conversation, but Spain, for me, they're outright favourites. They are the clear favourites now going into this year's tournament. So I think that they haven't, because of that lack of performance at the most recent tournaments on the European stage. There's a lot of pressure on this one as those standout favourites. They, as a side who haven't even reached the final, let alone win it, I think there's a lot on it. It's the one thing that all the other big nations in Europe have got over them. Germany, Netherlands, England, they've all gone out and won this trophy. It feels like it's now Spain's time to take this opportunity and go and get their name on that Euros trophy.
Yeah, well, let's turn the clocks back to the qualifiers in May or spring last year. Spain qualifying top of their group, which was a surprise to absolutely nobody. 18 goals across their 6 games, Harry. Very impressive record over the qualifiers.
Yeah, it was a strong record. I think it was probably one of the kinder groups in League A. They had Denmark, Czechia and Belgium, I think. So it was a nice group, but they still had to get
Belgium
through it.
are going to be sick of playing Spain by the end of this Euros. It'll be their 5th matchup in a year.
It's incredible. I don't think I've ever seen 2 sides meet each other this often. But yeah, I think that Spain, it was a kind draw, but they still had to get through it. They looked really good in the majority of games. The loss to Czechia was a bit of a weird one. and that I think that surprised a few people. But 5 other decent results other than that, and they look strong, they look dangerous. But as I said, I don't look at that group and think that there was anyone to challenge them. Yes, Denmark and Belgium have both made it to the proper tournament, and credit to both those two sides. But I think that in that group, we didn't really see, unlike the other qualification groups where we had Italy, Netherlands and Norway in one group, and we had England, France and Sweden in another group. I think Spain got quite a kind qualifying draw there, and but they did want to get through it, and that's the thing. Yeah. They got through it, and they did the bit they needed to do to reach the tournament with very minimal complications.
Yeah, the qualifiers were something of formality for Spain. Looking at their form, though, do you think we've seen a vulnerability? They lost in last summer's Olympics in pretty spectacular fashion, it has to be said. That Brazil game, that 4-2 defeat, and then losing in the bronze medal match to Germany. That was rather unexpected. And do you think we saw some problems for Spain?
I think we have, yeah. I think, again, obviously they've had some games where they've looked absolutely brilliant and they have just taken teams to the cleaners. But there have been other games where even if they've gone on to win, sides have made it difficult. The Belgian game, in the Nations League in match week 1, where they just about managed to get through by scoring 2 goals in added time.
Belgium went 2-0 up, and then they fell apart in the last 15 minutes.
That's an extraneous circumstance. You can't do that every game. You won't win every football match playing that way. So there were a couple of results where even when they won, they didn't play very well. At least they didn't start well, and you can get away with sides like that against Belgium. But I think it has been their problem in the Euros is, like, in the group, they've got Belgium. If that happens again, they might get away with it, but you won't get away with it in the knockouts. And I think that although they haven't been terrible, in terrible form, but they have had a few missed results, and especially when you compare it to the summer that
they still won 5 out of 6 in the Nations League, to be fair. But there was that loss to England on the record.
There was,
which I think does play a small part. It shows that England can beat Spain when the conditions are right.
Yeah, what we saw in those Spain-England games is that both sides will give each other a good game. Two very close score lines and one win each. You go into it not really knowing what's going to happen. If they would face off again, you can't really call it. Spain, again, they're a very strong side, but England have shown they can cause them a few difficulties, and that's the thing. The run for Spain between Euro 22 and World Cup 23, when they went on and won the World Cup, that run was brilliant, and they spent the whole year playing friendlies and all sorts, and they just smashed everyone, and they turned up the World Cup and went, we're going to win this, and they cruised to a victory there. But there's been a different feel. It's been obviously. It doesn't help. Obviously, a lot has happened, to be fair, for Spain since between the World Cup and this European Championships, and it hasn't been ideal, and they've still got a few problems. But these
quite
2
a lot
years,
over the last 5 years, and they've still managed to win a World Cup in that period.
So I think that as long as they get it right on the pitch, I think they've got a great shot. But as you say, they have shown. I think the Olympics was a big one when they did just show a little bit of vulnerability, but that can be ironed out. So world-class players iron out those problems once you get to a Euro. So hopefully for Spain's sake, they can do that and they can sort out those issues. Once we get into this tournament, that's what warm-up fixtures are for. But I think the most important thing was that in those 2 Nations League fixtures we had a month ago, they did look pretty strong. They looked really good. They were better than England, and they beat them fair and square, because England probably shouldn't have really been in that game and got a bit lucky at times. And they cruised past Belgium. So I think that was strong, is that when you're going in, when the tournament is 2 months away and you're beating a side you expect to be playing in the final and you're smashing another team, that looks really promising for Spain.
Yeah, let's just touch on the omission then of Jenny Hermoso, because that's been the biggest thing in the media recently. Were you surprised to see her not included? Were you disappointed to see her not included? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a difficult scenario. I think that, to be honest, I'm not incredibly surprised. I think that obviously a lot of people are gutted, and she is gutted. I think the way she took it was interesting. But overall, if Tomei doesn't want her in the squad, she doesn't want her in the squad. And that's the thing. I think that the way I look at it is that I'm judging it based on what Tomei thinks. I don't think Tomei hasn't picked her because of previous events. I think she's not picked her simply because she doesn't want her. And I don't think that it's fair to involve whatever has happened down the line. I think Tomei is looking at it simply from this European Championships. Who do I want in my squad? And she's decided that she doesn't want her in a squad, and I think that's fair.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? But I think, again, I know Tomei's not particularly popular, but I think I have to side with her on this one, because ultimately, yes, the situation around it is horrible. Hermoso would have been in this squad if it wasn't for the Rubiales incident. But I can't see how Tome can pick a player who hasn't been in the national camp at all over the last 2 years. So it's a horrible situation, but ultimately I think Tome's made the right decision. And I think the fans' reaction, I understand. There is that emotional attachment. I think Hermoso's reaction, I was disappointed by.
Yeah.
I think a player of her experience and pedigree would understand the decision, because you can't have a player in your squad you've never seen in your squad. That just doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I think it's the right decision. She wouldn't have started in this tournament regardless. She would have been more of a squad player. And yeah, Spain is so overloaded with talent now, it's not going to be noticed really. She wasn't going to start in this midfield. I think it's a justified decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think her reaction did lack a little bit of class, but yeah, you're right. And also, how unfair would it be for someone who has been involved in the squad for the last year to just get taken out, completely randomly because Hermoso now wants to come back? I think that would be a little bit unfair on the other players in the squad who have been here for the last year and have worked hard.
If you're looking at players who can play those midfield positions as backups, Calvin will be starting at the front line, but she could play there. Pina could play there, or Vicky Lopez, or you've got Zubieta, I think, but she's more of a defensive midfielder anyway. So there's not who do you take out of that to bring in Hermoso? So yeah, I think I completely understand the decision to not take Hermoso. I think the Spain squad though still looks really good.
Right, let's talk tactics then. I feel with Spain, this could be any tactical analysis of any Spain team over the last 20 years, and we could just dub the names and it would probably be quite correct, because this Spain side does play very typical Spanish tiki-taka football. But there are some nuances, and that's what we're going to look at in today's video. So let's start by having a look then at this Spain side. A pretty standard 4-3-3 as shown on screen now, where you've got this front three of Gonzalez, Pina and Paraluelo. Again, not sure if that's who's going to play, because you have got options like, of course, Mariona Caldente. You've got Castillo. We could see Redondo come in. So they've got options in here. I think Caldente is one of the more likely ones to start. We could see her rather than Pina. We could see Pina start on this right flank. We could see quite a few different things. My prediction is, though, that we'll see Pina on this left flank to start, and we'll see Paraluelo on this right-hand side to start. Not too sure. Obviously, Bonmatí, Putellas, they are the obvious ones. Gallardo in this single pivot. Then a back four of Carmona, Alexandri. Then you've got Paredes, Battier, and Catalina Cole in goal. It's a very, very strong team. We're all very familiar with that. So what does Spain like to do? Well, Spain like to dictate possession. Oftentimes, their possession stats in games will be around that 65 to 75% possession. 75 when it's an absurdly dominant performance. 65 is more their routine victories, because they like to move the ball in a very similar tiki-taka way. So what they like to do is build up patiently from the back. They send these fullbacks quite high up the lines, and then they'll look to just bring Paraluelo and Pina a little more narrower, and then they create triangles all across the pitch. So imagine Catalina Cole has the ball here. Wherever she chooses to play it, there are triangles. She could play it into Gallardo, and based on how Gallardo receives it, whether she receives with her back to goal or whether she receives on her side foot to carry the ball forward, she's going to have options, because she has options of Alexandria and Paredes behind her, or if she carries it forwards and takes that ball on, then she's got Putellas and Bonmatí. So you constantly get these triangles across the field. It's whoever you pass to, it's the same sort of situations. You get these deep triangles with, let's imagine something like it comes out to the side to Paredes. She's now got this option of Bonmatí or Battier, which creates a triangle. If it goes out to Alexandri, she's got this option where Putellas will drop in a little bit deeper. You create these triangles. But it's not just in build-up phases that these do these triangles in possession. It's also in wide areas. So if we imagine that Battier has got the ball here, she carries up the line. What you'll see is Paraluelo, you'll see Bonmatí, and again, you get these wide triangles. Often what we'll see is Paraluelo receiving it in this sort of space, and then we'll see Battier make this run beyond, and then you get these sorts of options. And oftentimes we'll see someone like Gallardo or Bonmatí drop into that sort of position to offer a deeper option. So if that ball through isn't on for Paraluelo, you play an up, back and through, and you play it back, and then Bonmatí plays it through to Ona Battier. So it's very flexible with how Spain like to build up, very structured, I should say. They love these wide triangles. They love slow, patient football. They like to lure in the opposition and then attack into the space that's left behind. I I think the other interesting part of this Spain team is going to be when they attack, because despite the fact Esther Gonzalez is leading the line, she's probably not going to be the main goal scoring threat. So if we imagine Spain in an attacking phase, we're going to see Gonzalez here pretty much in the goal when they have sustained possession phases. She's going to be on the back line of the defenders, causing trouble, being this presence in the box. Now, of course, she is there for a number of reasons. One, she could receive a ball from these fullbacks, because when they get forward, there's going to be crosses into the area, and we know Gonzalez has that prowess in the air. The other thing she's going to do, though, is drag that back line backwards, because it's going to create space on the edge of the area. If you imagine that Paraluelo and Claudia Pina are taking up these half spaces, and then you've got Putellas, who's going to be lurking in this sort of area, and also Bonmati running onto it, you end up with this sort of shape for Spain. Now, it may look quite aggressive, but actually what they're going to look to do a lot of the time, Spain, is that Battier will play in this sort of area, and it forms this lopsided or asymmetrical situational back three. Paraluelo is going to be close to this touchline, and then Putellas can burst into this space, or Bonmati can make a late run into this sort of area if needed. And it may look like this is quite a insecure out of possession shape, and that is probably true. When they play against sides who are very good in the transition, this Spain team can be hurt. We've seen that in the past. Think back to the Olympics, or even further back when they last played Japan. That game, Japan won because Spain were very poor at dealing with that transitional threat. The game against Brazil, Spain had two issues. One, they were very insecure in transition, and Brazil were able to counter-attack very effectively. But also, when Spain were building up, if we go back to this build-up phase here, what you can see is it's very gappy. We take Carmona back here and Gallardo. Without putting the rest of the players back, you can see these gaps emerge in this Spain side. So if you make a misplaced pass, or you make an error, like we saw from Catalina Cole, like we saw from Paredes in that game against Brazil, gaps will emerge for the opposition, and they will be able to win the ball high up the field, where they have, if they're a very good pressing side, a lot of players forward, and Spain won't be able to recover in those sorts of positions. So that is going to be a worry. The other one is, when we go back to this attacking shape, look at where the space is on this screen, because for anyone who watches a lot of football, it should be abundantly clear it's on this left-hand side, behind Olga Carmona. And we've seen this for Real Madrid. We've seen it with a lot of sides who have very attacking left-backs. Carmona functions more like a winger rather than a left-back. So we'll see Olga Carmona get super high. Now, if they break away quickly, there is so much space on this side being covered by no one. And if you drag Alexandria across to try and deal with that, then there's all this space centrally. And if you drag Paredes across, then there's all this space on this side. So quite easily, Spain can end up getting dragged out of shape because they have too many players committed to the attack. The other slight issue for Spain, not to focus too much on issues, but that's more interesting than just talk about how brilliant Spain are. We are all abundantly clear of that. Is that they are, they sometimes struggle against low blocks. So if you've got a side here who are playing a very defensive shape, and Spain are camped up in this sort of shape, it's very difficult to break them down and get a clear opportunity for a shot on goal. We saw it in the first half of Spain-England recently. Spain did something very interesting in the second half, which I'll touch on in a minute. But in the first half, they very much struggled to break down Spain. Let's break down England. They didn't have Claudia Pina on the pitch, and instead they had Mariona Caldente. What changed was Pina. Pina is a difference maker, because Pina is much more direct than someone like Caldente. This is why I think she'll start at the Euros. Pina will take players on. Pina will get past players, look for cutbacks. Pina will cut inside, take shots from range. For me, everyone's going to focus this tournament on Aitana Bonmati. Everyone does already focus on Aitana Bonmati, Alexia Putellas, Salma Paraluelo, the big names for Spain. I think the most dangerous player in this team is Claudia Pina by an absolute distance. I think we've seen that this season with Barcelona. They've struggled to break down opponents and beat opponents. Pina comes on, and suddenly the game has changed. I think she has to start for Spain at this tournament. And if you want to start Mariona Caldente, then that's either got to come on the right-hand side or somewhere else in this team. For me, though, Pina has to be in the starting 11. She's been excellent so far this season. We haven't really spoken about out-of-position shape because they very rarely don't have the ball. But if they don't have possession, they tend to press in this sort of... I'll do it on this side of the screen, it's easier to demonstrate. But it's more of a 4-1-4-1. So you end up with this sort of shape. It may be a little bit more compact than this at times, but I think this helps me demonstrate it most effectively. So Gonzalez will go and press the centre halves. Putellas and Bonmati, This is also this differs depending on how the opposition are looking to build up. So if they're building up with a double pivot, they'll push Putellas and Bonmati to be parallel with those players. If they're building up on a single pivot, Bonmati is going to drop off, and Putellas and Gonzalez will then act as a front two. And if they have a single pivot player in there, these two strikers will just block those runs, those passes into that single pivot player. Gallardo and Bonmati push up onto those midfielders, and then you have this usual sort of block of 4-4-2 that you expect to see. It's a fairly standard out of possession shape. Again, it's very rare that Spain don't have possession, so it's not used too much. But when you have 70% of the ball, you don't have to worry about the other 30%.
Right, let's get into predictions then. Looking at this Spain group, Harry, do you think it's probably the kindest out of the lot?
100%. It's very favourable. I think when you consider that, that's no disrespect to the teams they've got in their group, because I do think that Italy are a decent side, and Belgium and Portugal. I'll say that Belgium mounted some challenge to Spain in the Nations League, but neither of them have got a result against them.
They also lost 5-1 a few weeks ago.
But also, when you compare this opposition Spain are playing up against compared to the group of death with France, Netherlands and England, with the fact Germany have got the likes of Sweden in their group and Denmark, I think Spain have got a very nice group. But again, you have to play what the teams you're drawn against. Italy won't be an easy victory. They shouldn't have any problems against Portugal or Belgium. So I think they'll look to be in a good position. Again, they've got to focus. You can only play the side that is out on the same pitch as you. So they've got to get the job done. They'll want to make sure they put on a good show, because if they can take 9 points from 9 and really get some good form going into the knockouts, that would be the perfect situation. The last thing you want to do is rest on your laurels because you've got a kind group and then end up dropping silly points or making things difficult for yourselves. Just get out there, get the job done, get 9 points on the board and get yourself into the knockouts.
I mean, they've got a really nice run, I would say, straight through to the semi-finals. I think they'll win every game in their group, and I don't see anyone in Group A that could challenge them in that second place spot. If we assume that Norway could top that group, the other three sides, that's a lovely quarterfinal tie.
Yeah.
So I think Spain have got a lovely run to semis. Now, the only issue I think that poses could be complacency. Spain won't be tested by any of the top nations before the semi-final stage, whereas obviously England will play France, Netherlands in their group, Germany will play Sweden in their group. They're the contenders. They're all together in C and D. Spain are on the very favourable side of the draw. So it's going to be interesting to see how they get on. It just needs to be a professional job in the group stages, but I think I'm not doubting that Italy are a decent side. They're not as good as some of those top nations, and so that should be a more comfortable game for Spain.
Yeah, it's one of those where having a kind or a difficult group can make or break your campaign, because as you say, there can be very different circumstances, because if Spain come through these three sides, absolutely batter them, beat whoever they get in the quarterfinals comfortably, and go into the semi-final against England, and if England have had to tiptoe their way and struggle to get wins against some top sides, and suddenly Spain go into that as on a massive high. But the reverse can have the same effect. If Spain go into it and they take it a little bit too luxury and don't get the job done convincingly against the weaker sides, while England have been going out and being convincing against strong sides, suddenly someone like England would go into that semi-final in a very favourable position. So both sides of the draw present different opportunities, but I do think that Spain are in a good position, because if they do keep level-headed, they should win all 4 of their games right up to the semi-finals. That will match their highest ever finish at Euros already. They'll go into it on brilliant form, in brilliantly high spirit, and whether that's England or whoever, or Sweden, whoever, that they'll look to cause them a problem. And I think that if you're looking at it, if you're England, would you? If you're someone else in that Group D, would you rather try and move somewhere? Would you rather? Because if you finish second, then you avoid that Spain semi-final, and that could be pretty big. But then also you have to play Germany in the quarters.
Spain finished second.
Or Spain finished second.
Spain have the opportunity as well, I think, which is quite interesting. Spain will likely be able to rest up in their final group game, which I don't think many teams will be able to do, unless England have beaten both France and Netherlands, in which case they can rest up against Wales, or Germany have had their group incredibly comfortable. Spain are probably the only side that are going to have that luxury of being able to rest up, because they should beat Portugal and Belgium. And unless Italy have taken 2 wins from 2, which is also possible, in which case that could put a bit of pressure on Spain in terms of who's going to top that group. But unless that's happened, Spain will be in a position where they can probably rest up the side. So that is helpful in tournament football when you've got such a full-on schedule where you've got 4 days between a game, 3-4 days between a game. It becomes very testing. But if you're able to break that up by resting in that final group game, you give your players a week of rest rather than a few days.
Yeah.
Which, when we're coming out of a very full-on domestic season, that's going to be very helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I say it all the time. I've said it in the previews and all the talk we've done about the European Championships. You win the Euros with your squad. You don't win it as a starting 11. You look at sides who have won this tournament. England won it in 22 because they used their squad. The amount of times England won games because they had players come off the bench or they rotated the 11 and still got the job done. That's why they won that tournament. That's what Spain have got to do, and they've got the squad for it, and that is why I think they're in such a great position. It's why they won the World Cup, because when you've got a 23-player squad who are all at the level to win a competition, you've got to use that squad, and you've got to be effective with it. And I think, as you say, rotation and chopping and changing 11 has to be utilised by Tomé, because the Spain squad has so much quality, as you'd mentioned in the tactical bit, that I think she's got to make sure she uses it and use that rotation, because that could be what sets Spain apart from the rest. Is their squad depth is just they're obviously other top sides have brilliant squad depth as well, but I think their depth across the board is just is unrivaled, really.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Spain are set up in a really nice position. I think they're still probably my favourites to go and win the tournament. As much as when we get to predictions, I am going to say England. Spain are in a really good position, and deservedly so. Very, very good side. That, though, does round up today's preview. If you have enjoyed, make sure to get involved in the comments down below. Leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit subscribe. If you haven't already, go to the other videos on our channel. We've just done full previews for Group A. And join us tomorrow when we discuss Italy. That, though, is everything from us today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.